I had so many meetings today.
Yeah.
And then I went to, and then I had, and then someone from Ireland called me and said, Blackwell's in town. And his wife then messaged me and said, would you come for dinner tonight? So I was like, oh yeah, no problem. So I'm at home and I'm just getting an Uber ready to go into the West End. And I'm scrolling down and I'm like, oh shit, I'm supposed to be over here.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, so luckily. And then when I read it, it read the Pall Mall deposit. And I literally went to the...
Are you familiar with it?
No, but I literally went to... why did I go all the way to... where's the post office, that big post office place up in...
Halsden?
No, not Halsden. Up in... Oh, God, what's the road? What's just behind King's Cross?
Behind King's
and
Cross.
It's called the Pall Mall. It's called the Royal Mail Deposit.
Oh,
so
man.
I had that on my head. So I was on my way into flipping...
You was going all the way up there?
I was going to town, man. And I looked at it again.
You were having one of them ones.
I was having one of those ones, man. So bless you, man.
No, love.
I was... I was... So I've been working with this publisher, and they're great because they did Chris Blackwell's book. But this is the first book that they've done by a black man, and this guy David Olusogun, who is obviously does looks out for projects for the bigger publisher Bonnier to get involved in. Hence why I got an email from him. But once you're in the publishers, it's all white middle class,
of course.
All right. So I said, in no uncertain terms, I don't know if you've worked with Dark Matter Agency.
No.
All right, so they're just a marketing agency, but in a black space, and they do books and stuff and blah blah.
Right.
And because in my diary, I was getting like all the normal BBC stuff and blah blah blah, and then they were sending me, and then there was like stuff like the Green Man Festival, and I was like, yo, man.
Yeah. Now sometimes you got to come over here. You get what I'm saying?
Dude,
it's still
I
we need to. You understand what I'm saying? Like people need to hear.
Lunch. I was having lunch with two young brothers.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, there was. I said, I have just, the book and everything. And they said, what, you done a book? And I was like, oh mate, these publishers, man.
Yeah, see
seriously,
it there.
Man. So yeah, no. So I spoke to David, and he was like, do you know Chuckie? I was like, oh, shut up, man.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me.
No, listen, honestly, like it's an honor. Like it's mad because obviously I've seen you and spoken to you. Mate, we recorded a real good conversation some years ago. And when I got the email that you was doing this, I was like, you know what? Perfect. There's more conversation. There's more questions. There's more. I'm forever inquisitive anyway. Do you get what I'm saying? And also on top of that, I feel like as I've grown within what I'm doing, my audience is wider, and there's a lot of younger people that don't necessarily know or wasn't around when I was around. So their perspective is very different. Do you get what I'm saying? So now listen, first and foremost, I'm very happy that you've come and sat on the couch because I feel like I've got absolute certified one. Gang, listen, Darcus Bees is here with me. This is I don't know if I ever told you this, yeah. My first introduction to you, was I was working in, I'm not going to tell you who with yet, but I was working in Putney. No, it was Wandsworth first. And his phone kept ringing like a few times a week. So I answered the phone. It's Darcus, can I speak to? Then I was like, oh yeah, cool. And then I'd be like, who is Darcus? Then she would explain to me who Darcus was. That was Jackie Davidson. I used to work for Jackie Davidson.
Hard Zone.
Yeah, Hard Zone. Yeah. That was my first job in music. I met Jackie through a guy called Reggie Styles. Reggie Styles used to work for her. You probably know Reggie, right?
Yeah.
And then in there was where I started to understand and learn certain things, and it was all through her. Was my first introduction to you.
Oh, wow.
And then later on, my best mate was working with you and whatever else. Do you get what I'm saying? So listen, for people who don't know, 30 years at Island Records, 30 whole years. Yeah. Oh, wow. Worked his way to being the president of the label, first black president on top of that. But in that, was a part of some legendary moments. Amy Winehouse in particular. Went to America, did some stuff over there. President over there as well, right?
President and CEO.
Right, CEO over there. So understand that this is a guy here sitting on the couch. New book out as well. See with me, I'm not great at reading books unless it is based upon real life. I'm not a person who's good at reading storybooks.
Yeah.
I need to read about either somebody's life or something that has actually happened. So Rebel with a Cause is actually out now. The first thing I actually want to speak to you about is I could sit here and I could list a whole bunch of your accolades, yeah? And I'm sure if somebody came to your yard, they would see like awards and just a lot of things that in some way solidifies who you are without you having to speak. Do you feel accomplished? Do you feel that, like, being in the music business for such a long time and doing all of what you've done, yeah? Now you're at the stage that you're at now. Do you actually feel that level of accomplishment?
No, not until I actually started to write the book and kind of lay everything out end to end, and you kind of get a sense to stop and you kind of look at what you've done as you lay it out and kind of go, oh shit, I actually have done a bit, you know. But I think you're just wired. Well, I was wired, and I understand why I was wired, but I was just wired to just head down and just go, and just be relentless about whatever the process was, so you would never rest on your laurels or have time to smell the flowers. Yeah, and it hasn't been up until I got to plus 50. You know, with the event of COVID helping me just kind of everything slammed on the brakes to kind of everything catch up and then start figuring out stuff. And I've since figured out that I've done quite a bit, but that's for other people to say. If you sit there and kind of go, look at my accomplishments, look what I've done, then you're just one step away from oblivion. And I've seen it happen all the time. So I never wanted myself to feel that I had accomplished, but it was easy not to feel that way because there was a bit of imposter syndrome going on, I just, you know, I think the writing the book and a bit of therapy helped me kind of go, Alden, you should start to feel like you have accomplished something, but I've still got more to accomplish.
Like what? Like professional or personal?
I think professional and personal, because professional, every success becomes today's success comes tomorrow's catalogue. So you know, if you want to be still excited about the music business, I mean it's never ending if you want it to be, right? And I sometimes the economics drive you. And in the beginning, it wasn't about the economics. It's about I loved it. And then you do well. So then it becomes about the economics. And then you lose sight of why you loved it. Yeah. And if you get a chance to get back to why you loved it, you can go again. So, I think there's more to accomplish, more as what does it look like about being excited about music again? Because that's missing. And even if I was a punter or I was working in the music industry, I'd want to feel excited. You know, music still has a profound place in my life, and so should it be for other people.
Yeah, for real. Do you know? I feel like when I have conversations with people that love music as deeply as I do, I feel like we go through these periods here where we feel uninspired by what is happening. And then there's other times when we feel like highly inspired. I always feel like I can find things away from the noise that makes me feel some level of excitement, but also sometimes we almost find ourselves in a time where it feels like it's a bit uninspiring. And I feel like right now feels like that quite universally, to be fair.
But that's okay, because maybe it's supposed to be that way, and then there's supposed to be, you know, change makers that come along and change stuff. You know, everything has its peaks and troughs. Everything has its cycle. As the tide washes in, it washes out, and it washes out what, you know, it washes out the flotsam. And you know, the music it's kind of like it needs burning down to feel inspired again.
Yeah,
you know, you know, in its guise at the moment, it's uninspiring.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, sometimes you just got to burn shit down, you know, to promote growth again.
What does contentment look like for you then? What does that look like?
That's a bloody good question. That's a really good question. And I don't think I'm wired for contentment. I've realised that now, because, you know, just the basics of I got diagnosed with ADHD, which means you're just, you know, whoever's wired like that, you know, there's an energy that they have, that I used to call it DARCUS energy, right, and I've got to a place where I should be content, right. I've done enough where I don't need to prove it again, but I want to be inspired by people, by music, you know, and that's, you know, you just want to be around those people. And I think the democratization of the ability for everybody to upload music, for everybody to exist, for everybody to make music, for everybody to sound a producer, for everybody to say that they're an artist. So the bar goes down, you know, who are the gatekeepers? Who's keeping the bar high?
Do you know, I've got this in my note. I was going to ask you this a lot later, but I was going to say, like, because that's another conversation that you hear a lot, especially amongst young people, yeah? Gatekeepers. Is gatekeeping bad?
Well, call it, I don't know, call it mentoring, call it teaching, call it inspiring. You know, people, you used to come up under people. You used to admire what people had done before you, and the way they did it and who they did it with, whether it was the artist or they were making records or the executive. You know, I just think it's just about being inspired, by people, and you know, you take little bits as you go and of people, and you know, sack of salt there, pinch of salt there. But you usually, you know, my personality or my ability to do the job is made up of taking from loads of different situations, from loads of different people, from shit that went south to stuff that went spectacularly well. Yeah. You know, and all of that and then some before I even had a hit. All right. So when you do get to the point where you can start making records and being successful, you know how you're doing it. You know how it's all coming together. You know, it's not by luck. It's not by design. You know, and that, you learn that from people. You learn that by spending, you know, nights in the studio with amazing producers, or, you know, doing a lockout, 24-hour lockout in a studio where you're trying to get a record mixed in one day, because that's all the money that you've got in the budget. So, you know, where, you know, when you made a record, you made records with musicians. So who's leading who's teaching who's inspiring who?
So good question.
You know, and I can only speak for what I see and what I experience, especially since I came back from America.
Yeah, we'll get to elements of that as well. I feel like from my perspective, it feels like there's a light disconnect between like people that work at labels and are in and around labels to people that are artists and that are trying to make an understanding of stuff. And usually what you do here is, if someone is moaning about something, you usually hear the artist talking about the injustice that they've had and whatever it is from their side. But there feels like there's a disconnect between the two. And because of that, that's where sometimes you do start hearing a thing like gatekeeping super weaponized. I do think though, also, you know, if it means that one person is leading something or whatever it may be, but they're suppressing something else, that becomes a bit of a problem. But if there's no suppressing going on, but there's just someone who's trying to lead, but trying to do it in a way where they can guide and protect, then it becomes a bit different, right?
Yeah, you know, listen, when Jessie J or Tinchy, I just remember that period, those were artists that were found online. You know, there were no gatekeepers for Jessie J or Tinchy. They just needed a moment where a record company could come and take them to the next level.
Yeah.
But they were already engaging in building their community and the fans. If you remember Jessie J, she was, you know, half her first album, she was performing online, like when she was doing that kind of singing songs in her bathroom.
Yeah.
So,
which is mad common now. Bare people are doing that now, but when she was doing that, that wasn't really as common.
No, she was, you know, there was a handful of artists that you started to find online, or they were just doing it for themselves. You know, I just remember, you know, so it's it wasn't about the gatekeepers then. It was about the creativity and the ambition of those characters, of those artists at the time. It's probably much easier to find a fan now than it was back then, because there's loads of different platforms, touch points for you to find a fan, or a fan to find you. So, you know, the ability to be amazing to find people, it doesn't have to be that anymore. You don't have to be amazing. You just got to have a sense of how to just be a bit more social.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and you know, so the ability to kind of that, so it's not even about your talent or your voice, right? It's just about, are you better at social media?
How do you feel about that?
It is what it is. It is what it is. It's just about whether there's a handful of people, which it always is, or a moment where something happens in a corner of a room, or a record happens, or a moment happens, or you know, I just think it's about, you know, going back down the genres, down the sub-genres, and the next thing will be, you won't see it coming.
Yeah,
because it would have already happened.
100%.
Right. And, you know, I just remember when I used to travel, people used to talk about the UK scene as really exciting. Right. And when you used to go to America, they just be like, you cats are crazy, man. Like, you know, that drum and bass, that jungle, that garage, that Craig David, man. You know, so, you know, that Streets record.
Yeah.
You know, so when our stuff used to travel, people, that was our USP. And I don't know what that is. It like water, it finds its own level. It will all come back around again.
Yeah.
You know, our good friend Ben and Dave might make that record that says that's what it is.
Yeah.
You know, that's the bar. You know, as stuff cycles in and cycles out, and the tide washes in and tide washes out. That's what being an artist looks like.
100%.
You
and
know?
I also think as well, like, one thing that I've been saying a lot as well is like, your environment and what you're around a lot of the time is what is your value. Do you get what I'm saying? So if you can find what makes that special thing within that, without chasing what somebody else does, ultimately this becomes your value. And then when you look around, there's an element of relatability in it from a fan's perspective, but also it's like people from different parts of the world are not necessarily going to find you, because you're you.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that part of it. The value is just where you ultimately, your environment and where you come from. But then it's just about making that as big as it possibly can be.
And then it's about, can you scale it up?
Yeah.
And again, you know, when I look at Sam Smith and Disclosure, that record Latch, that was a moment of two artists, Disclosure and Sam Smith, coming together in a sound that just was a bit fresh for its time, but it produced one of the biggest artists that the UK has seen in decades,
Massive.
Sam Smith. So it was like that Artful Dodger and Craig David moment, and it wasn't Rewind, because Rewind was a culture record.
Yeah,
it was the bit after of Fill Me In 7 Days. It was just that it kind of left the club floor and crossed over. But where it comes from, I think if we get back to the source, then again, I just think it's cycle.
Definitely. In the book, I like the way that you've tied. I've just read a section of it, but I like the way that I like the way it starts, essentially, because elements of it is your mindset of where you was at a certain point in America, which we will discuss. But then you almost then go into your dad, elements of your dad in that, and your dad was like a racial justice commentator, an activist, and a writer.
Broadcaster.
Broadcaster.
Yeah.
He was definitely like, doing his bit for the community. Did he have what was his opinion on you pursuing music? Like, did he have any preconceptions of the music business, so to speak, as somebody who is an activist speaking for people? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's funny you just ask the question, because my dad for a long time, and it wasn't probably until Amy Winehouse started to blow up, and not even on the second album, on the first album, but dad didn't really understand what I did or what my skill set was in the music industry, right? Because to him, if I was in the music industry, but you're not musical, you're not a musician, you don't play anything. So he was like, so what's your skill? Because we're growing up, you never showed me that like this music was a thing. But again, when dads think they're present and they're not present, to know that. But my mum and dad had the most amazing record collection, but that aside, it wasn't until Amy, kind of, people started to talk about Amy, and it was like, and I hadn't had any real huge success. It was kind of Amy, the Sugar Babes, and Tayo all started to happen at the same time. But so up until that point, he was just like, what's an A&R man? What do you mean? But what do you mean you find talent and you're in the studio with them? You don't know about the studio. What do you know about the studio?
Right. Yeah.
So he was confused that anybody would be listening to me, and that I would have any value or any input into anybody making music whatsoever. My dad loved his music. They had the best record collection. So yeah, my dad wasn't convinced for a while what it even was. So yeah, that was interesting.
Do you remember? Because I feel like a lot of us, this happens in different in different contexts. Yeah. So like, for anyone who's got a parent and a parent is in a part of your life or whatnot, there becomes a point where maybe when you're young, your mum or your dad or whoever seems like indirectly a superhero. They're immortal. They're going to be around forever. All of that type of stuff. And then you get to a point when you realize, oh, wait, hold on a minute. My parent was younger than me at one point. They were younger than me, and they had a different type of life or whatnot, With all of what your dad was actually doing, do you remember the moment when you realized, oh, no, my dad is actually serious about something that is happening in the world. Do you remember that part?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you know, the one thing that I was aware, and it was because of Dad, and it was because of Mum, and it was because they were Black Panthers and they were civil activists. I was aware of race at a very early age, you know, and not just the incoming of hate that we had incoming when we were growing up in the 70s from white people, but just, you know, politically what it was to be black, and, you know, the hill that you had to stand on from such a young age that you couldn't let people take the piss. So Dad was always central to that because I was always on demonstrations and he was always speaking and he was always talking. But there was probably two instances. One when there was a famous poet, reggae poet called Linton Kwesi Johnson, that when my dad got jailed, Linton wrote a protest record for him, and it was called "Man Free for Darcus How," and then the second time, and that was around when I was 7 or 8. So these were the kind of records that I was listening to, and then the next time was when my dad had a TV program on Channel 4 called The Devil's Advocate, and it was just he became such a cult figure, and I just remember whenever I was with him, he was walking down the street, or I went to meet him in the West End, you know, for a Chinese, and they would say, "Don't worry about the bill, Mr. Howe."
Yeah.
The Devil's Advocate, and people were like, "What? Darcus? Is that guy Darcus on TV? Why have you got the same name? What, he's your dad?
Yeah.
How come you haven't got the same surname?" So you have to kind of explain, you know. So even though I had the same surname, people didn't make the same first name. People never made the connection until it was like, till my dad became really famous and cult personality on Devil's Advocate, and people were like, "What? That's your dad?" Darcus. Right. So yeah, that was the time when I was like, "Oh, he's kind of crossed over into the bit of the mainstream." Yeah, it's, you know, it was always difficult because we had the name, and I've wished that upon my son, who's called Darcus as well. But you don't realise until you get a bit older that you can't really fuck about with the name. And probably for a while I was fucking around with the name.
Yeah.
And so yeah, you don't want the younger Darcus. I used to be called Little Darcus, and you just didn't want that one mashing up the name Darcus. So that's what I tell my son now.
Right.
So I'll say, I'll change your name.
Understand the legacy.
Yeah.
Understand the legacy.
Which is a bit of pressure on him.
It is.
You know, because it turned out to, which again, I didn't realise until much later, till writing the book and stuff, that played a part in terms of what I stood for, what I would take a pasted for, because I knew I was going to lose the fight. But because of the way I was brought up, I wasn't going to do the runner. I was going to stay in the fight. So whether that was physically or verbally.
What do you mean by lose the fight, and what are you talking about in what context?
You know, if you were growing up in the 70s and someone came for you, and it was, you know, throwing racial insults or coming for you physically, sometimes you had to be on your toes and run because you didn't want to die. But other times you just spoke like, well, we're gonna have this tear up. I know I'm gonna get beaten up, but I can't. You know, so, you know, and yeah, I had to be careful that I didn't take some of that attitude into the workspace. But, but yeah, it was you kind of. I probably, and I still have a sense of injustice. You know what I mean? So if I think you're talking down to me, or you're talking down in a situation, you know, I'll pipe up. And sometimes, you got to know when to hold your tongue.
Did you carry some of that in the because even early on in the book, where you're sort of mentioning about, like, you want to sign an act, your boss is not letting you sign an act, and you're going crazy. You're talking a bit about that, and which in the end you're like, I can't even be here. But did you see like some of that, the anger and also, the things that you grew up seeing and knowing, did that play a part in how you was at times in an office?
Yeah, especially initially, because again, you grow up, you think, even if you're in the room because you're good at what you do, you still feel a sense of, oh, mate, they're tolerating me. And they're the ones that let you in the room. So you're being let in the room, and you hope it's because you're good.
Yeah. Oh, do you feel like an element in your mind? There's a part of you that's thinking, "Rah, are they trying to deal with me on some token type thing?"
Yeah, because everybody likes the optics. Everybody likes the optics, and when I was coming up, it was the late 80s, and there wasn't a lot of young black people coming up in the industry. So, and yeah, if so I figured out, what do they call it? What do they call it? Code switching.
Yeah, code switching.
And I figured that out really early. So, I figured it out too late. Two scenarios. I figured it out too late. One, because I was in a situation where I was just an assistant in promotions, and someone told me to get something, like I was an idiot, and I was like, "Who are you talking to?" This is a much older person than me. I'm a young kid, and I was like, "Who are you talking to?" And the guy was looking at me going, "What do you mean? Who am I talking to?" And I went to pick up the chair.
Oh, swear.
Yeah, I went to pick up the chair like you would do if you were just being dumb outside.
Yeah.
And I just remember just going and looking at the guy's face, and he was like a look of horror, like, is he going to pick up this chair and dash it? So I caught myself and I put the chair down. And the second time was when I walked myself out of Ireland because they wouldn't let me sign this artist. Where I was just like, well, if you don't want to sign this, if you won't let me sign this artist, I might as well leave. And it was like, well, there's the door. And I stupidly showed myself out the door. So, there's a couple of those two instances kind of was a bit of the turning point for me, that when I got the chance to get back to Ireland, because I left Ireland and I came back a couple of years later. But from that point, I said, never again. Never again. Apart from if I'm not good at my job and I don't deliver, I will get fired. But never again am I going to get fired and I'm going to walk myself out the door because I'm impatient, I'm angry, I'm frustrated.
Because when I read that, a part of me was like, I wasn't mad at it. Because I was thinking, if you are there to do a job, essentially a part of that is you having to persuade your boss still at times. They're not always gonna believe in it, but it's for them or for you at that point where you was at to do that. And there's a part of me that's like, well, you're standing on something that you really, really believe. And although it didn't work out straight away, there must have been something in that later on maybe made that person say, do you know what? Even though it was 2 years later, and to be fair, you did try to sign the artist and it didn't necessarily work out or whatever.
Yeah, it didn't work out.
It didn't work. It didn't work out. But it's like, you know what? Circle back, because there's a passion and there's a fight in you. No?
Do you know what? I never looked at it like that. But yeah, because you're right, because there's something there's something about you. And luckily I got the chance to prove that there was something about me.
Yeah.
Some people don't get that second chance. So even to your point, even if it was like, oh wow, nice one for standing up. Standing up for yourself. The one thing that I didn't have, and I tell people this all the time when they came with that behavior towards me, it's like, when I was coming out, it was so hard to sign acts. You had to jump through hoops, and then you never got to sign the acts, right? So
why was it? Because someone else was trying to sign them on because they just didn't want to sign.
It was just because the bar was high. The people in your A&R department, the ones that have experience are just really good. And all and you know nothing, and all you have is what you like or what you think you like, but you have no experience except, but I want to do it. What you have to do is get that I want to do it energy behind some years under your belt.
Yeah.
And that you've seen and been mentored in the process. And the same way that I learnt to not pop my head over the parapet and get it shot off before I was ready, was that I used to tell people, don't call it unless you're ready. Because when you call it, all right, then you have to deliver. Right, and what I mean by call it is by saying I want to do this.
I back this.
I back this, and it's all right to fail, but now you're in, and now you understand that the expectation. And I don't mind if you fail because it's the statistics tell you that not everything you're going to sign works, but you got to sign, and something better work because that's your job. And do it again, but not with that. Do it with this now. So and do it over a period of years.
Yeah.
All right. So what is and you got to work. You got, how long have you been doing this?
Podding. I've been podding for 10 plus years now.
And is my man who's sitting there learning?
Yeah. Essentially, he's been with me for a year and a half now.
Right. And that ability to just kind of be around someone that's been doing it for years and is good at their craft, as it should be. You should be good at your art. You should be good at your craft. And that's what will give you longevity. And you'll always take shots, and some shots will go and hit and some shots will fall short, but that will lead you on to the next thing, and you go cold, and then you have the ability to dig yourself out and heat yourself up again and become hot again and go again. And then 10 years later be sitting there going, wow, has it been 10 years already?
Yeah.
And then has it been 15 years already? Has it been 20 years already? Has it been 30 years already? So, that's what it should be. People have got to care.
What would you say was like the most common fight that you personally had to fight in the building?
The fight. I don't think it was ever a fight. I think it was you were always trying to convince people that what you were doing was good, and convince people that they should be interested in what you're doing. And I'm just talking about the people that you work with, because then you've got to go and convince the rest of the world.
Yeah, for sure.
To get down with what you signed, but you're just in a world of always trying to convince people. That's the job, and that doesn't. Sorry, what was the question?
The fight, like the most common fight that you may have had to fight in.
I don't. I think what's the fight? The fight is just to be heard. Yeah. Right. But the way you get heard, and you used to think it was through your mouth, right? And either talking a good fight or moaning about something, and it's just about the tangible facts of, can your artist sell records?
Yeah. Can
you be successful? That's the black and white of it. So once you understand that, and you become accountable for it, and you're delivering it, nothing becomes a fight.
Yeah.
Right? Nothing becomes a fight, but what you are doing is you can convince 1 million people over here with a certain act, then you've got to go and convince another million people over here with a different kind of act. So it's just about, you're always just trying to convince what you're doing is good or great or shit.
Yeah.
You know, I don't, you know, that's so yeah, I think you're only fighting when you go cold.
Yeah, there you go.
You're fighting.
It's like see, when something hits and you're in, then it's a lot more. People are answering the phone. People are picking up the phone. People are dealing with you a lot different. All of these type of things, and then it's after a while, got to do it again.
Got to do it again,
Yeah.
and it's not, and it's funny because you've actually got to be more successful than the artist that you're being successful with, because they've got to do it. That artist over there is being successful for themselves. All they care about is themselves. I've got a whole roster to care about, and I've got to be successful with at least a handful of them.
And each artist that you've signed, they're the center of their own universe.
The center of their own
So
universe.
as far as they're concerned, they don't care that you've got a roster.
No.
It's me.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing with me?
Yeah. And that's and while you've got 10 tabs open with 10 artists, right, all making records at the same time, and you've got to jump from each tab and make them feel like they're getting you in that moment in their world, and all you care about is their world. And then you've got to go next door and literally flip a switch and be ready for the next room. But again, that's what you got to do.
Is there any artist, like, now looking back, that you feel you could have maybe handled better in hindsight?
Not really, because you can't. You always you don't wake up in the morning just to be a dickhead or mash up someone. And as much as you get stuff right, you're going to get more stuff wrong. And some people are going to not like what you got to say, or you won't like what they've got to say to you. Your decision to part, or their decision to want to get out the deal, is, you know, I've had a couple of artists that said, we want to get out of the deal. We don't like it here. We don't like you. And I'm like, whoa, what do you mean you don't like me? What do you mean you don't like it here? And get really like hurt and offended by it. But, you know, I've then got to go but, you know, I've got to be cold hearted or business-like to make decisions where I have to part company with an executive or an artist. So it's you know, if an executive came to me and said that I don't like it here and I want to leave, I just don't like the culture here, I don't like the way you do things, you'd be like, yo, I feel offended, and you'd be hurt that they feel that way about the company. Blah, blah. So and that's happened. So while I'm walking around going, everybody loves the company and everybody loves me, no, you have different situations where people get disappointed with you, and people are properly, spectacularly happy with you. And usually it's in success that everyone's happy with you.
Of course.
And it's usually in failure that everybody hates you. And there are some people that understand why it happens. I just come back down to, for the most part, and I get that we have a role, and I get that we add value, but there are artists who are going to make it with you in the room or not. And we like to take credit that it only happened because we signed them.
Yeah,
I'd like to think, especially because of Ireland, that Ireland signed a certain breed of artists with a certain understanding of why we signed them. But a lot of those artists that we work with, a lot of them were already who they were. We just amplified their art, gave them resources to amplify their art and their craft, and help them build their business, and help them build their career. So Amy was be Amy whether she signed to me or Warner or Sony.
Would you have? Do you not think that, like,
Oh, unless they did a ray on her. Unless they did a ray on her, but but those things happened a few and far between. Where an artist wants out of a deal and they get out of the deal and blow up worldwide.
Yeah, that got to be a bitter pill to swallow at times as well, though, right? No, you sign an artist and then they it doesn't work out. They're like, no. Well, you kind of saw it a little bit with Ray, innit?
No, that's what I'm talking. I was talking about Ray.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
That
she literally just was. That was her thing. She was there for years, isn't it? And then all of a sudden, like she's left, and then it's just gone crazy.
Yeah, I think there's some artists that are dependent on you on helping them get people in the room. Setting up sessions and stuff. But still, there's a breed of artists that will make it, and I think even more so now that Ray had the ability and the songs and the story and the resource to just go and do it independently. Which in that world is a bit harder to do in pop because everything's scale. But yeah, I think once she kind of showed that could be the direction of travel, that you can pull down that kind of success and not sign to a major. That's the kind of thing that you don't want to see happen outside a major label.
Yeah,
if you work inside a major label.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, seeing obviously on a personal one, it's amazing to see somebody just having some success like that anyway, where they've just been plugging away. It hasn't happened for them, and then it has happened for them. And the reality is that only a very, very small percentage of people are going to make it to that height. Yeah, but a part of it is slightly disruptive to that business side of it, no? And doesn't that contribute to maybe, especially in this era today, where we fast forward, like it almost seems like the labels have a bit of bad PR, so to speak, because if you offer the right money, people are going to sign or whatever. But there are still a lot of people out there right now that feel like I just can't do it.
It's easy to show the positives and show the negatives of signing to a major. The destination for a lot of people is not majors, and if they do the deal, it's because a song is going off. Something's happened with the algorithm. Something's going viral, and a song is going off, and everybody's chasing this record that's showing that it's data and it's pinging over wherever it's pinging. That's data A&R, right? So yeah, I forgot why I was on that.
I was just basically saying that, like, it being disruptive to the business, someone having record labels having bad PR, and like people not necessarily feeling like people will, if you offer them enough money, more often than not, people are going to sign. If you hit them with something, it has to be with some artists. It's like the number might have to be a lot bigger. Let's say, for example, Central C. He may not have at one point been in a rush to sign because of they knew what they could do without it. But I'm not saying that this would have ever have happened, but if somebody said, we'll give you 300 million today, then maybe the conversation is different. So to make it more realistic though, it's like somebody might turn around and say, like people, the general consensus on the streets are, I ain't really trying to sign or whatever else and whatnot, yeah. But then at the same time, it's like you offer £1 million. The conversation turns a little bit, but it doesn't necessarily take away from the fact that the PR is still bad though today. Do you know what I mean? It's still like, you always hearing these stories, which a lot of the time seem very one-sided. That was what I was mentioning before. It's like, I do hear a lot of artists that when things don't go well, talking about it not going well. Yeah. You don't usually hear them talking about it when things are going well. It's always usually when it doesn't go well, and then you only usually hear that one side of it, that bad deal that they signed, the bad this, the bad that, and whatnot. But which contributes to the PR not being great.
Well, but that's record. No one says. I always go. Who's going to go to a bank and get $500,000 out of the bank manager to spend on music? All right. We're crazy enough in the music industry to give people money to make music in the hopes that something might happen. That's some crazy investment model, right? So, when people get this money and they say it doesn't work, sometimes I go, well, whose fault is it? It's easy to kind of go, it's the record company, because it makes you not look rubbish. It makes the manager not look rubbish. And that's why I say, people who are going to make it work because they have some kind of vision for themselves. Some people that make it work don't take the money. They don't take the money, and they don't take a lot of money. The people that take a lot of money know it's not going to work. Whether that's whether it's at the front of the brain or the back of their brain, or their lawyer. But most deals are predicated on stuff not working. Most people take the money because they might not get back to the table again. All right. So, and then you have to be, and if it's a big deal and it kind of happens, but not enough that it's enough to pick up the next option, that you've got to give a bigger advance, and you're kind of like, oh my God, something looks on the outside successful, but we paid a lot of money for it. And now we've got to pick up the option. We've got to give them more money. Oh. So taking dough just shortens the life cycle, shortens the lifespan, and someone could point out where it didn't, but I know in 30 years, taking a lot of dough shortens your lifespan. It even if you're being semi-successful, it sucks the life out of just that slow build.
Yeah.
Even if it looks like, oh, we're building, but you took too much dough, so you're carrying too much weight, and so yeah, I always admire people that bet on themselves. I used to bet on myself. I was just deliver records and stuff will come. I never asked for a pay rise. I think I've asked for a pay rise once in my career. I've never asked for title.
Why did you ask for it that one time?
Because I wanted to buy my flat.
Okay.
And I needed to go from 18 grand to 24 grand to be able to buy my first flat.
Who had you signed anyone at that point, or?
No.
Oh.
No. But again, it's just about how you make yourself indispensable. So when nothing's happening, why do people still want you around?
Yeah, that's true. 100. That's a good one. If
know.
When nothing's happening, why should I have you around?
Right, and that's because, oh, you're going to help me get out of this. Nothing's happening.
Yeah.
Oh, you know so and so. Oh, you can link me. Oh, you play me so and so. So at some point, you show why you're indispensable, and then and that's without records. And then when you got the records.
Do you think that your one was when you signed Amy, or do you think it happened before that? The Amy thing.
Yeah.
Do you think that was the one that made, like, people would have looked at the things that you did before that as, yeah, he's moving, he's doing his thing, but the Amy thing, do you think that did something different?
No. Yeah. It's crazy because I was just having hits back to back with the Sugar Babes on every single album, and it was just like bang, bang. So I should have been feeling myself then, and I wasn't. And then I remember there was a moment where I woke up on a Monday, and the Sugar Babes About You Now was #1 single, and Amy Back to Black was #1 album. And I was like, that's when I was like, they can't really. I'm fine. I'm cool.
Yeah, they can't chat.
And I was like, I've now got a job for life, right? Because in my head, you know, and then Tyre went to #1 in America.
Oh yeah,
right. Yeah. So I was just like, where's Dark? Is at the studio? You know, I was like, I don't even know where I was at the time, but it was just I'd kind of hit that moment I had the trifecta, 3 acts just going off at the same time. And then I tell you when all went downhill was when they said, do you want to be, no, you are co-president with Ted Cockle. That's when it all went fucking south for me.
Really?
Yeah, because then you're just not this kind of like happy-go-lucky A&R person just hanging out in the studio with the biggest artists in the world at that time. And all of a sudden, you've got to run a label and have people and be responsible for the roster, be responsible for the people, be responsible for the number, you know, to make the number every year. And you can't just drift off and go and run a spliff down in the studio with whoever. Like, you have to be grown up, you know. And that was, I didn't want to be a leader. I didn't want to. You know, there were some people that would come to work and have some entitled in their mind that they were going to run the label. You know, there was these kids that said, what do you want to do? I'm going to run the label. I was like, what? Cool, yeah. There was no one in my eye line that said to me that I could ever run a label. All I knew after that time, I'd walked myself out of Ireland, that I was never going to get fired again. If I couldn't be great, then I was going to be good. I was never going to just be okay. And you know, I had some crazy failures, but some spectacular successes. So it was born of those successes that someone said, "Do you want? You are the co-president of the label." So when people, you know, people attach numbers and titles to something, to what is success?
Yeah,
right. Success to me was turning up and delivering, and off the back of that, some lunatic said run the company, and then you have to learn what running the company looks like, you know, because one day you're just Darcus head of A&R, and the next day, no, same day, before lunch and after lunch. Before lunch I was Darcus head of A&R, and then after lunch I was Darcus co-president of Island Records with Ted Cockle. And you're sitting there in the office and everybody's looking at you going, before lunch, you were just Darcus,
yeah.
Like, and now you're our boss.
Yeah.
So you kind of had to kind of deal with that that mad trajectory.
Does that also change the way that you see music? So like, as an A&R, you're literally just looking for what you think is going to work, but also what sounds good, sonics, all these type of things and whatnot. But when you're a boss now, you're looking at, remember what you said, the thing that you've got to hit every year. Does it change the way that you see music?
Yeah, you see it more as a business. You see it more as a business. But luckily, you've come from a place of, especially for being an A&R man, and you come from a place of what you think is culture and making records and blah 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 of stuff that you like, right? It was about stuff that I liked, and luckily the stuff that I liked went around the world. When you run the business, it's not about what you like, right? And it's not about your taste in some instances. So when my heads of A&R would bring me stuff, it wasn't about I didn't like it. For the most part, you know, if they were excited about it and I didn't understand it, go fill your boots. And you know, whether that was Disclosure or whether that was Sam Smith and Disclosure and Sam Smith or Mumford and Sons, I was more excited that the kids were excited about it.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't have to get everything, you know, and you know, because sometimes if I don't sign what I don't feel, you might miss and Ed Sheeran.
Oh, there you go. Did you ever do that?
Yeah.
Talk on that.
Why?
What
No, not really. No, it's I've talked about it. It's in
There's someone. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Without getting into because obviously I'd like to. But did someone come to you and say, "See this this one here, think this is the one"?
Yeah.
And then what happened?
Listen,
it's an awkward one, isn't it?
No, it's not awkward. It's not awkward at all. It's I remember it one way, other people remember it another way.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, if we don't sign something, if we sign something and it's amazing, other people take the plaudits. If I don't sign something and it's huge, I get the missing it. But that's one, you can't sign everything. Two, for me personally, Ed wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
Three, whoever else wanted to sign, whoever else was in the room, you got to fight for it. Four, it could have been a Ray moment.
Yeah,
we could have done the deal, and it could have been a Ray moment where you just kind of go, I know you signed it, but I don't get it, and then something just gets stuck in the pipes, and it's just, so
the music don't come out.
Yeah, and whether I thought it was Island or I thought it was, it was a personal thing is neither here nor there. Sometimes you just miss on things, and
that's got to be. It just has to just be part of the job. You can't call them all. You just can't. There probably isn't a person who's called them all. Yeah. There might be some that have picked a couple and said that's just that, and those couple have just worked out and they've just focused just on that. But you just can't. With that type of job, you just can't really call them all. I actually always remember, I've told this many times on the pod though, I remember when I first saw Ed Sheeran and I nearly left because he was about to perform in a place called Sunday Show. It was everyone in there was black, essentially, yeah? And as soon as he started setting up, you could just hear everyone was just getting ready to laugh.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Yeah. And something in me was like, I don't really want to be a part of that. I feel sorry for my man. It's getting near to the end. You know what? I'm just going to bounce because I don't really want to stand here and be laughing at man. And as I was leaving is when he started to play a thing. Then he started to loop it. He was doing the looping thing and whatever. So I was literally standing by the door. I was standing by the door ready to leave. And he's looping his thing and whatnot. And then he's kind of singing. I'm thinking, this is all right still. So then I stayed. And then once he finished, it was, a little one. Then he did another one. And then it was kind of like,
right, okay.
And then by the time he was done, it was like, nah,
the fact that he put himself in that room.
Yeah.
He had no issues about putting himself in different rooms. And I remember Annie, who was the A&R woman, brilliant. She wanted to sign him. And she took me to see him play at the Half Moon in Putney. And I was like, Annie, I really don't get it. I really don't get it. And he had A-Team at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And it's okay that I don't get it. But and then it wasn't until, remember he did the tune with Devlin?
Yeah.
Was it Crosstown Traffic? It was the Jimi Hendrix sample.
Yeah.
And Ed was singing the hook. And I think it was Devlin must have been playing Coco.
Mm.
And I just remember going to the show and I just remember it was kicking off. And I remember just going through the crowd and I just saw Devlin and Ed on stage. And when the penny drops,
yeah,
it was just, I remember when everybody was trying to sign Craig David, but he had the song Walking Away, which was that big crossover record, but he didn't have Rewind, right?
Yeah.
He didn't have any type of those records, but had other demos. And I remember a couple of months after everyone was running around Craig David, I just remember taking my daughter to the fair and being on the waltzers, and this record coming on. It was like rewind. when the crowd say "Bo Selector," and you know when you're just like, oh, that's how you get in.
Yeah.
And it was the Ed thing. The Ed just kind of via that night that you was at, and via Jamal, and via Devlin, and via who he had no fear of being in front of. He was just embraced, and that's that. To my point, Ed was going to be Ed because he was going to put himself in those rooms and have no fear. Right? So, you know, those artists, you can't. Some people you have to tell them what rooms to be in. Some people just know and care about not embarrassing themselves. You know what I mean? About, I'll slide into someone's DMs. I'll make it happen.
Yeah.
Why am I sliding into someone's DMs for? Like, what am I looking stupid for?
Yeah.
Like, artist to artist, like. So, you know, there's you can't sign everything, and luckily, you know, we still did a madness, you know, with other artists.
What would you say was a highlight for you at Ireland in UK? Though, presidency wise, what was a highlight for you? Actually, it doesn't have to be presidency; it can be somewhere.
I just think you just creating a place where most people come and don't want to go, and that there is an actual way and a belief and a strong belief of why you do it and how you do it. In terms of the partnership with the artist and the people that come to work. So I think being able to, for over a decade, just stay at that level, and then go to America because of all of that work that we did, right? And all of that success that we had, that it was a strong enough optics that I can go to America now.
Was that harder though? Was it harder, like, in a sense, like, mentally? Because obviously you've been at a place for such a long time, and that obviously feels like your home. Your home is not far from there. So it's like the difference between like living somewhere near where you work, but your actual home is near there. Your home is like where you've been brought up, all these type of things. And then you go to a whole different country where there's probably a different culture in how people do things, different personalities, different types of egos that you're dealing with, and that. And then you come over. Like, how difficult was that transition for you?
It was hard. You know, it doesn't matter how many times you go to America, you know, popping over to America for a couple of days, or even, you know, 5 days, going over, do some meetings and then flying back. You know, living and working in America is different from just popping over, and I've been going to America for over 3 decades, but living there it was a whole different headspace, because one, there's a rhythm that any new country you go to, there's a rhythm, right? And New York was so intense, and because I'm traveling a lot, it took me quite a long time, over a year, to get into the rhythm, right? Because, you know, you've grown up in this rhythm, the UK, the time zone, this is what your body's set to. So when I went to America, and that you're 5 hours behind, right? And then when you do go to work, it's like 100 miles an hour. Your body is like, you don't become an athlete overnight. Your body takes a while to kind of train and just get into the rhythm of what living in America is and what working in America is. So, and then there's the cultural thing. You know, I wasn't African American, I was Afro-Caribbean. Right. And you're not managing, you know, people from the UK. You're managing people from the US, out of New York, and everybody in the office aren't from New York. They're just from different parts of the US. Yeah. New York is just where you end up and you come into work. Where it's like people live in Birmingham but come to London to, you know, to work. That London's the city, you know. So, you know, if you're Atlanta, well, not Atlanta because people stay in Atlanta, but if you're in those other fly over states, you know, the Rust Belt. You want to get to New York, or you want to get to LA, or so yeah, you're dealing with people from different parts of America, and then you're dealing with African Americans, you're dealing with Latinos, you're dealing with Asians, you're dealing with Jewish people, you're dealing with and this is all in the madness, because timing is everything. I went there in 2018. Trump was in power. COVID hit. Yeah, they killed George Floyd. Yeah, they killed Aubrey. The jogger. Yeah. They Tamir, all of them. It was just, I was just in America, and I was just waking up, going to work, but also this stuff was soundtracking my time out there.
Yeah. That's an interesting part of the book, actually. You're talking about
being black in America is a movie. The first year was the honeymoon period. I loved it. It was my time to go and build out my black book and go and network, and all the stuff that if you lived in America you didn't need to do. Yeah, right? Yeah. So and COVID and lockdown stopped all of that, right? Because we all went into lockdown and we all went working from home, and but yeah, while we was in COVID, and there was the demonstrations, and I took the company out. We all met up at Union Square as a company, because everybody was getting heat. Everybody was from a group of people that were getting heat. Whether you're gay, straight, Jewish, black, at that time, Chinese. At that time in America, everybody was catching heat. Yeah. So
all the marginalized,
all the marginalized were just catching heat. Yeah. So it was, as a black man who comes from protest, I was in America just seeing it through a completely different lens. Some people just living in America just normalizes that stuff. I was just sitting there going, "Yo, this is a madness," and and I had to make a decision that it didn't matter, that I was CEO and how much money I was making. I had to make a decision, and there was a lot of factors that went into it. But America wasn't going to be where I was going to spend the rest of my life, or let my son and my daughter grow up there. And getting stopped by the police. How can your chances of survival go down?
Yeah, that's nuts, isn't it?
In America. So, and we were living on the Upper West Side, and there wasn't any black people. It was just, it wasn't any black people. I was just, at some point you've got to kind of go, what am I doing it for? And not what would Dad do, but if I've talked all of this stuff before and I've been brought up the way I have, I'm going to go home. I'm not going to stay for the money. Yeah. And I'm not going to stay for the plaudits, right? My daughter was trapped here because there were the no-fly thing happening. She was in London at the time. And I was earning a fortune and we were being successful. I'd signed Sabrina Carpenter and other couple of artists that were blowing up.
Oh, swear.
Yeah.
Oh, mad.
So I was kind of, I've been here, seen it, and I've done it. I came here as CEO. And even though Sabrina was starting to blow up, she hadn't gone global like she's gone global now. Yeah. But, that even for me, that even made it easier for me to kind of go, and I was right about Sabrina in America. So everything I did, I was to your point, and you asked earlier about contentment. I was content with that part of my life. Right. I was content with my part of my life. The ambition and to go again is to feel excited about what's not great about the music industry, because that's what you can make exciting again.
There you go. And do you know what? This is just something that I've been thinking myself. Yeah. Actually, let me ask you this: do you feel as though the record industry lost its traditional way to make music to the internet, and by that, where it became more about social media following and being more personable and all of these type of things, yeah? Do you think that left a lot of people lost in how to pursue signing and finding what ultimately is good sonically? Even though that is very subjective, of course.
No, I think...
like sometimes, I guess what I'm saying is that like, the general consensus to people who are not necessarily within the business will feel like now people in the corporate world listen more with the number than they do with the ear.
Yeah, I mean, again, yeah. Today, where this will all air out is probably in the next 10, 15 years, because what today's music is tomorrow's catalogue. And you know, what is evergreen, what lives, what is that stands the test of time. What sounds great now should sound great in 50 years.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think that's going to be the case for this period of time. So people have got to care about today's music is tomorrow's legacy and catalogue.
What does that look like? And
when you compare eras of music, the 80s, the 90s, the noughties, and the records that were being made, and you compare like for like, and you listen to you listen to, I don't know, the Adele first record or the Amy first record, or the Massive Attack album, or Thriller by Michael Jackson, or Prince records, or even if we go back to, you know, we talk about Fat Man Scoop, like amazing club records that were made then but sound amazing now. If people really think that they are involved in making these records now, or they are thinking at that level of what you're doing now is going to stand the test of time or stand up to records that are amazing, then you're lying and you'll be found out. So that's where I just think stuff will...
I hear it.
It will just write.
I hear it. I actually think the ones that we will look back at in this time will be the ones that didn't do much.
Right? You know,
the ones that like were sort of slyly ignored a little bit. It didn't really... I think we'll look back and be like, oh, yo, that was cold.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying?
But, you know, those are culture records.
Yeah.
Right? And I you know, and that's why I think that it's not about what 99% of the business is, because 99% of the business was just about volume. It's just about selling shitloads. There's always, it's 1% that gives you change, right? And whether that's, you know, technology changes the delivery system. It shouldn't dumb down the art that's being delivered through the technology. You know, I did an interview and the quote was, you know, I said, if you make pop, you'll be a pop artist. If you treat music like pop, you'll be a pop artist. If you treat music like art, you'll be an artist. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether you're making pop or not. It's just if you treat it like fast food and you treat it like pop, that's what you'll be. You'll be pop.
Yeah.
But if you treat it like music as art, and therefore you have to be good at your craft or get better at your craft, you know, You know, I can play the chopsticks. I'm not a pianist.
Yeah.
You know, I can paint a picture. I'm not an artist in that sense. So, you know, you have to be good at your craft to feel confident to call yourself that.
How did the ADHD help and hinder what you did and how you functioned within the business?
It probably hindered me in a sense that, you know, I was very emotional. I could go 0 to 100, and that's the kind of stuff I was fighting with every fiber of my being, because as you just walk through life, people are just pulling you, trying to draw you out.
Yeah.
Right? You walk into a shop and someone's just trying to draw you out because they're looking at you, following you around the shop. You get on the bus on your way or the train on the way to work, and no one's sitting next to you, and the train is full, but your seat is empty. You know, so you're always getting drawn out, and then you get to the office and people are like, whatever it is, you know. So you're always kind of in this sense of I forgot what the question was. Sorry.
How the ADHD?
Sorry, you said that ADHD shows itself that I will literally start speaking and forget what the question was.
Yeah.
But it emotional regulation was just a thing, and you just kind of masking and trying to put a lid on it all the time. But the ability to all tabs open and just go.
Yeah.
You know, if I could go to, forget New York, I could fly to LA and come back same day. I could go to LA for a meeting.
That's bonkers.
And come back same day. And I would do it just because I'd rather sit 4 hours in a car rather than 2 hours on a train.
Okay.
Because you're just in this ultra focus mode.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying.
I could operate with a roster of acts with all tabs open, jumping from one studio to the next, making different records with different people. Where it became, where the obvious where it was an issue was basically, and again, because I was diagnosed late, as a kid, everybody's telling you you're disruptive, you can't sit still, you don't listen, all you say is sorry, and if that's the case, you're going to amount to nothing. So I had that stigma where, so you kind of grow up with that. You kind of, you know, while I was writing the book and I got diagnosed with ADHD, I was kind of we got to take this back to childhood because this was present. And then you read all your school reports and it reads like, what happened to Darcus? Did he ever make it? Did he go to jail? Was he on drugs? What happened to him? So that was my school report and how it read, that this kid weren't going to make it. All right. And until, you know, the music became, and that's why the book became important to me, because luckily I was so lucky to get to music, to get to Island Records, to have a career, because, you know, as I've gone through life, not many of us have made it to where I have made it to. But luckily that music was the backdrop. If you take it back to the beginning of the book or childhood, it's basically just the journey that we all go on in the beginning as young black men, that life is just going to be rolled out hard for us. It's going to be a hard. We don't really know what's in store for us, right? And we know you're going to be pushing. It's going to be uphill struggle. You're going to have to be convincing people, or people are just be like, "Oh, scared of you," so you know that was it. And a lot of people like me at my age weren't diagnosed.
No.
So, and through diagnosis, I managed to go left, but everyone else of my mates went right. Right. And I managed to go left because of what my parents did. You know, it was, but we were all kind of like, it was always going to be difficult, and you know, through how we grow up, there's a lot of trauma that goes along with it. You know, we normalize a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
As young black men, we normalize it, and then people wonder why. You know, it's like a bit of weed. We're smoking weed. You know what I mean? And then when you can't afford to buy, you know, afford the eighth of weed, then you gotta go, right, let me just juggle so I can take my little piece off. You know, because you've had to start smoking weed because you want to slow shit down. So if people would die, the route into madness, not madness as in the mental health, but the madness of the dungeons dark and grim of the road.
Yeah.
You know, that my diagnosis is just like, oh shit, I wasn't a waste of space. Right. I wasn't dumb. It wasn't that I wasn't listening. It wasn't that I wasn't smart, but you lot all said I was.
Right.
It's just that I was wired differently. Whether it's ADHD or autism, right? Or whatever it is, young, and all of that doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from deep-rooted trauma.
Yeah.
So just telling people that they're not bad people goes a long way.
Yeah.
It goes a long, you know. So the book for me was basically, and especially with the diagnosis, was a reference for, and I've, since the book's been out, I've had so many people call me, go, dude, I'm kind of like front and center, like that's me you're talking about. And then, you know, for the young'uns, is it just a bit of a reference point of, it's not quick money.
I'm telling you.
Right? It's not quick money. Be careful what you wish for. Not everybody's a leader. So what does success look like? Not everybody can be rich. But what does being sensible look like? Because everybody's on this all
and
or
contentment.
It's all, and that's not real. It's not real. So and you can only have these conversations with people that have been around the block now.
Right.
So I've been around the block now for 30 years. So I can sit down and have these conversations. You're probably 10 or 15 years behind me in terms of that extra 15 years I've got on you, but you've got, so if I'm sitting in a room with you and there's you're in the room, right? You're getting the benefit of me, the benefit of what he's done. So all of a sudden you're getting two people's knowledge from two different angles, and that's not in the room for people. Or people think they can YouTube stuff, or see someone on Instagram and go, that's a move, not knowing that my man's been doing this for years.
Yeah.
Right, and you just want people to win, and you want people to have careers. And if that's what it's about. It's the simple things. It's accountability.
That's the reason why as well, right at the beginning, I asked you about like contentment and like what that looks like, because I think in the beginning, naturally, you look at some of the other things and then you realize, it's just not even that. And, you know, life has a interesting way of like being able to propel you in certain moments, and you get some great stuff out of it, but also can humble you quite quickly as well, you know.
It's and you got to take the humble and reset. You know, what was the 3 words? Earn, and I think it's Amaru.
Oh yeah, he's wicked.
Yeah, and he just, what did he say? You've earned. What did he say? Learn, earn, and return, or earn, learn, and return. In whatever order, but the return. Yeah. You know, I've learned and I've earned, and now I'm going to return.
Yeah.
And
yeah, man. Big up Amaru as well. He does something called the Perspective. Sits down with people, has conversations and whatnot. Really insightful, and he's very good at pulling information and stuff like that. So yeah, big him up, man. Big him up every time. Darcus, I really appreciate you coming through. New book out right now. I really, really advise, to read this. This is good. If you are a new book reader, you can follow me in regards to like autobiographies, because that's just more my thing. But I would say as well, there's a lot of interesting stuff that will probably inspire you, but also just a really good story of a black man who was just trying to figure it out. You get what I'm saying? 100%. So yeah, man. Darcus as well. Like, I wish you nothing more than some peace of mind, my bro.
Bless you, man.
And yeah, man, we'll talk again soon. Love
Thank
every
you very
time.
much.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Yeah, love.